this session, if you look at the agenda, is called Past, Present, Future.
I'm called Past. You're kidding me. Philippe, you know this old gypsy saying, by the day after tomorrow, tomorrow will be yesterday.
Oui.
If we were in the US Senate, we would start by saying thank you for your service. You know that. And I'm delighted to introduce Konstantinos Masselos, who perhaps fewer people know in the room, but has been a telecom professional for a very long time. Kostas will be chairman of BEREC in 2023. And, we'll come to Kostas in a minute. He's got a few interesting skills in his hands. To break the ice, I suggest to ask a round of questions while you guys think of more clever questions. Okay? Right. And there will be people with microphones, so get ready. I'll make a start. Institutional question, perhaps question that you would not immediately think about. Michel, I'd like to start with you. And I know that you've personally, at BEREC, taken care of developing the international relation of BEREC. It's true that we are so busy with the code-centered work program that we sometimes, somebody like me, I'm not so aware of what you are doing outside the EU. So tell us a bit more. What has BEREC been doing in the field of international relation that you have developed?
Okay, let me just say hello to everybody. I'm very pleased to see you here today after 2 years. The previous Stakeholder Forum was exactly 2 years ago. And yes, Philippe, on international relation, to tell you a little more about that, I need to go back to what we adopted last year. You might remember that we adopted a strategy 2021-2025. And in this strategy, we decided to also develop and adopt an international strategy for the work relation we have with the non-EU NRAs and the other international organizations. So we just observed by with this digital policy growing, BEREC has to deal with more and more topics, and as a result, the field for international cooperation has increased also exponentially. And to deal with that, we adopted this strategy with a double objective. The first objective is to have a more systematic, a more structured approach for these international relations to be beneficial to the attainment of our own priorities and the fulfillment of the yearly work program, taking into account the limited resources we have. The second objective of this international strategy is to make sure that international relation, international strategy is well embedded in BEREC's core activities, and so concretely will be implemented in a work program. About priorities, it's quite easy because the priorities of this international strategy are well aligned with the general strategy, being promoting full connectivity, also supporting sustainable and open digital markets and empowering end users. So what are the actions we can see in this strategy? Well, first of all, there is something very important. It's the open model we have. This is quite unique. We are all NRAs implementing the same regulatory framework all over Europe. And this is something we would like to promote with interested parties all over the world. That's the first element. On the topics, of course, you have let's call them the traditional topics for the electronic communication sector, being open internet or international roaming and consumer protections or wholesale access regulation and so on. You all know that. But also broader than the traditional telco sector with the digital agenda. Annemarie talked about in the work program AI, for instance, digital platform regulations. We did it also for last year and this year as well. And what is also important is that the nature and the timing of these international relations needs to be prioritized. Why is it so? Because we want a positive output on both sides for us as BEREC members, but also for
what is the main benefit? Because there is this Brussels effect, you know, the world wants to know how we do it in Europe, and contrary to what we're seeing in Brussels, the world seem to think that we do things right outside of Europe. So I can see the benefit for the rest of the world, but what is the benefit for BEREC of evangelizing, if you like, in India, Canada, US? I mean, there is a long list of...
Absolutely, but there is an interest, definitely. And why is it so? But with all the challenges we face, take climate change with sustainability, privacy, cybersecurity, or consumer protection, but also AI, as I mentioned, digital platform regulation, pandemic, digital divide, we will talk about this later. Those challenges have a global nature. And to solve this and to deal with these challenges, we need a global solution. And for that, we need a broader scale. We need to work together at a regional level. That's the very interesting part for us to cooperate. And so the question will be why? Because we also want to amplify the European value we have and we cherish so much, and we know that there are different levels of cooperation.
Yeah.
This exchange of view, experiences we have, and we can talk with the heads of other regulators from other regions, sharing views, developing new ideas, but also raising awareness about this cooperation, this international cooperation. We can also cooperate with experts at expert level in an informal way or on basis of more institutionalized way, for like an agreement or memorandum of understanding. But again, what about the topic? The question is, what about and who should be involved in this? And this could be also broader than the traditional telco regulators as well. I talked about priorities. Mm-hmm. And for priorities, we have developed kind of guiding principles. So one of these principles is quite easy. We want to have a multilateral approach, so we prefer to develop international relations with our counterparts instead of separate regulators. It's more efficient, of course. The geographic proximity is also something important, so we have memorandum of understanding with other organizations at borders of Europe, like BEREC for the eastern part of Europe, and emerge around the Mediterranean Sea. That's another type of priority, but also we would like to cooperate with regions which are very well developed from a technological point of view, so there is a learning process also for us. And in the end, as I mentioned earlier, what we would like to do is to export the European model. That's what we are keen of, and that's the reason why we do not necessarily are seeking to have new partnerships everywhere in the world, but just to develop the partnership we have with the existing partners.
Thank you, Michel. So you know more what's behind the scene on this Brussels effect, how our values are being promoted. Annemarie, I can't resist to ask you the obvious question. You've been innovating on the format of this day. And many of you this morning were, I'm sure, delighted to meet the co-chairs of the working group. It's often said the people that do the real work at BEREC, in fact. And do you have a first feedback? I thought it was a great idea, but what is your feeling? Will you do it again?
Well, I already organized or hosted 2 stakeholder forums in 1 year, so I think that's kind of enough. But no, this is actually why I mentioned I think there was, I heard from groups and sessions that usually went outside their time slot, but as a positive sign of the fact that that conversation was really helpful, and all parties learned from that, from questions that the co-chairs hadn't thought of yet, or things that could be answered very readily. As I said this morning when we started, I hope this is a start of a more structured, to deepen and structure the dialogue between stakeholders and the different working groups. And some of the ideas, so this is, I think, a good start to know that there are co-chairs, they're actual, BEREC is not just an institution or vague logo, there's actually real people doing real work. And we will, every working group will have, very soon, will have their own email address at BEREC. So if you come up with anything else, and you think, oh, this is something that, piece of information that I want to share, or a concern that I have, or a question, please feel free to address your question directly to the relevant working group. So these are things that I think it is important to have a structured dialogue and to maintain it, even if we are working more virtually, because we will meet, we enjoy meeting physically, but we shouldn't forget about the advantages of having interaction without having to travel all the time. So this is one of the things I've been thinking about. And the other, as I mentioned, I would really like to receive feedback on people, how they experienced this morning, because I could only get a few snippets so far, so that we can learn and say, is this a good initiative? What can be better? What would be a good frequency? Is this something for every year or every other year? I mean, just help us reflect and learn. So that I think is also very much a question I would like to put out there and will address, and that will be sent to everyone who registered.
I think it's a great initiative, and if you've got great ideas, don't hesitate to throw them in between 2 questions. Thank you, Annemarie. I think this is really a most welcome initiative, this strengthened dialogue with the co-chairs and the working group. Kostas, I introduced you as, of course, the chairman of EETT in Greece and BEREC Chair 2023 it will be. But I'd like to be, as a Belgian citizen, a bit nationalist for a second and remind the audience that you studied for your PhD at the prestigious EMEC in Leuven, which is, for those who don't know EMEC, this is like the equivalent of Mecca, but for semiconductors, And, when looking at the digital compass to remind me of which connectivity targets our masters had set, I saw right next to connectivity, you've got semiconductors. I mean, we telecom people, we know we need semiconductors, but I don't know, in my 30 years of telecom, I never discussed semiconductors, but now it is the line below connectivity in the digital compass. And I read things like, right now, Europe controls 10% of the world value of semiconductors, and we should be producing at least 20, and then there are things that I don't understand about 5 nanometers and 2 nanometers, but I'm beyond my sort of level of expertise. But, our newspapers are full of the Commissioner Breton, really determined to bring some of the production here. You've got the Intel CEOs, others touring capitals to, you're an expert of this. What do you make of this? Is it really so important for Europe to produce its semiconductors?
Well, Philippe, first of all, thank you for the introduction. And good afternoon. It's really great to be among you today. Well, a question on semiconductors is for sure very relevant these days. And as you said, it has been in the media, this issue about the shortage of integrated circuits for so long. So I think European Commission's decision to support high-end semiconductor manufacturing in Europe is the right decision in the right time, for sure. Not because the semiconductor footprint of Europe worldwide will be doubled, 10% to 20%, as you said, but also because Europe will have capability for high-end semiconductor manufacturing. And on top of everything, Europe will be resilient in shortages possibly in the future in this very critical component supply chain. For example, consider a manufacturer of electric vehicles that plans to introduce self-driving capabilities to the cars that manufactures. This means that he needs AI system-on-chip integrated circuit, which is in fact a supercomputer on chip, 50 billion 50 billion transistors, computer on chip. This will become part of our transportation in the near future. We cannot afford any issues again in semiconductor supply chain. So this is the most important for Europe. So clearly this is the right decision. And Europe, to move forward fast in this direction, of course it will have to do maybe 1 or 2 huge investments, 10 to 20 billion euros for semiconductor manufacturing facilities. And this means that we have to invest close to already existing facilities or to already existing ecosystems, because this will allow us to move faster to the production by 12 or 18 months. But still, I would see a role for smaller countries and smaller companies in Europe. So European strategy might consider including some budget, much smaller, for SMEs that work on some niche parts of this semiconductor industry market and supply chain. For example, we see that now computing is moving from multi-core computing to heterogeneous accelerated computing. And the last 3 to 4 years, we see accelerators for AI, dominant, but also for complex tasks of network protocols to be implemented as chiplets. And in the future, what we will see will be combining chiplets, different accelerators, interconnecting them in what we call today advanced packaging. So I would see potential for smaller countries and smaller companies invest in standardizing chiplets and also work on technologies to interconnect chiplets, because this is going to be the key issue in the future, advanced packaging and interconnecting chiplets. So there is still opportunity for smaller countries, for smaller companies to contribute and become part of this global semiconductor ecosystem. So I think Europe is definitely in the right direction, but there are still opportunities for smaller companies and countries in Europe to contribute.
Thank you for that message, because I saw it essentially as reinforcing our resilience, but I had lost, and because of these announcements about Intel CEOs wondering where to locate its factory, I had lost sight of the fact that there were opportunities for smaller companies. Thank you for that message. Let's now turn to the room for the first question. I would like to ask somebody courageous to break the ice. I've done my job, so you should do. Who wants to break the ice on this side? And courageously ask for the microphone. Do we have a microphone? Yes, so we're ready. Voilà, we've got Anton here at the front from Deutsche Telekom. Thank you, Anton. And the next person should get ready, okay?
Thank you very much. Anton Hochko, Deutsche Telekom. My question goes to Annemarie. It's concerning the work program for 22 and specifically the consumer protection part. I believe that bridging the digital divide gap, especially post the COVID pandemics, will be a very important part. Because just, I think, 3 days ago, a very extensive report on this has been published. I mean, I'm still reading through that. But already now I have a follow-up question to that. Will there be an environmental sustainability aspect introduced into this report or introduced into this work stream in general? Because it's quite clear that this topic is becoming more and more practical with every iteration of major laws. For example, I would expect that the coming broadband cost reduction directive will introduce a lot of environmental aspects. So I'm curious if also future tools and approaches to bridge the digital divide will also be in some way reflecting the constraints put by the necessity to respect the environment.
Well, so how to meet the challenge of bridging the digital divide while taking into account the new constraint.
To which extent that would be constrained or maybe even supported by some sustainable, let's say, initiatives.
Yeah. I thought regulators had enough constraint already, so this is one more, Annemarie. So.
Yeah, but as I said, we're very aware that at the one, as you said, there is a digital divide, and in line with our strategy, we have to promote connectivity, sustainable competition, and empower end users, so that bridging the digital divide is very much into our genes. But at the same time, we are aware that the green agenda and the need to think about sustainability is out there as well. And so this year we already started a work stream to ask ourselves as what are the major challenges in the telco sector, and this may be one of them. While bridging the digital divide, while rolling out new technology, is that done in a more or less sustainable manner? And I think the first question that we are asking ourselves now is, what contribution can we have as regulators, and what contribution are we having right now? So the basics would be, if we, through our actions, without knowing it and without wanting it, are hampering a move towards more sustainable technologies, of course, we should rethink those policies. And maybe we can also go one step further to see if, through our actions and interventions, we can actually stimulate a more sustainable way towards bridging the digital divide. But it's still a question that we are looking into. We have been reaching out to a lot of stakeholders that we haven't met before, NGOs that are specializing in sustainability issues, in fellow European bodies. No, so this is very much a question that we're working and studying right now, and I hope to have a bit more pointers as to how to take this into account in a productive way. Because I do think it is this will be at the heart of this will be one of the things that we have to take into account, think about the future of regulation. But I can't be more definite yet on what that will look like.
Thank you, Annemarie. If we have time, we should go back to sustainability and 5G perhaps a bit later. So I've got Innocenzo from MVNO Europe. Can we have a mic here at the front? When he's not talking about telecom, by the way, Innocenzo is a great jazz piano player. So if you're in Brussels when he plays, you should go and listen to it.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. I would like to I'm very happy to be here after the so long lockdown period. So I'm very happy to see so many colleagues back. And I would like to congratulate also for BEREC, because first side, we appreciate the draft work program for 2022, especially the inclusion of the specific chapter on the wholesale mobile connectivity, which, as you recognize, is a matter where MVNOs are struggling. And we see that you address in this chapter the need for factual investigation still needed. And so we are interested to understand in which potential direction this factual investigation can go. Are you considering to collect data like kind of wholesale agreement market, prices, or the way regulation has been working in that market? Because even if such markets are normally unregulated, there are some exceptions. There have been also competition arising as a result of conditions in licenses or in disputing in front of competition authority and so on. So I think that there is a lot of practice which in fact can be collected in order to better understand how this market should evolve, should be guided. So can I understand if you already have something in mind?
Thank you, Innocenzo. So wholesale mobile access, where do we go next? I said it was a dead topic. You know, we buried Market 15 a long time ago, but it's back now. It's back. Okay. Some people will love it. Some people will be concerned.
There is, as you say, Philippe, the mobile market is drawing a lot of attention, and then I think that of course, has to do with the fact that the 5G advent is getting more and more concrete and substantive, and we do see that with growing need for high connectivity, broadband connectivity, you see the importance of mobile market and the interest of both our stakeholders. This part of the work stream is exactly as it says it is. We want to factually investigate the competition dynamics, given the fact that we are on the verge of the 5G advent to the markets, and we want to get a better grasp of the competition dynamics. So this will not be an evaluating study on the impact of our regulation, although it might play a role, but this is just to get a factual basis to start our internal discussions on how can we understand the competition dynamics that we see in the various markets within Europe. And for the rest, this is parts will be dealt with through the chair study, just to make sure that the people in the working group have enough, because the people in the working group have enough on their plate as it is. And we are still working out the details of the questions, but it is what it says it is. There is an increased interest in how does the market evolve at present, and how are we to understand its competition dynamics with all the parts that are there.
Kostas, do you wish to comment on this very point?
Yeah, just a couple of comments complementary to what Annemarie already mentioned, and I believe this is great initiative that we will have this study next year, but we have been working on MVNO cases in Greece. Our market has no MVNOs at this stage, so we were also very interested in exploring this model. I strongly believe that the MVNO model is very aligned to the trend of separating infrastructure from services and the softwareization of telecoms industry. I think that we need to explore and really identify the opportunities for MVNO to be a win-win model between MNOs and MVNOs, and then see what are the real market barriers. We have different regulation across Europe, so we have, in Greece, for example, we have provisions for MVNOs through our spectrum licenses. In other countries, we have dispute resolution mechanisms. I mean, very different things. I strongly believe that this is a very interesting topic to explore, so this is a very good point in the agenda for Work Program 2022.
Thank you, Kostas. Aurélie from Orange, could you raise your hand, because otherwise the ladies do not see you, Aurélie. Next to the camera. Voilà.
Thank you very much. So indeed, Aurélie Doutrio from Orange. First of all, thanks a lot for this forum. It's so good to meet with people in real compared to the last 2 years. So, and also I wanted to thank you for the new format of this morning, which were very interesting to follow and to participate. So I'm not going to ask questions on roaming or net neutrality, which are key for us, because we already discussed that this morning with the working group chairs. I would have a question on the objective for the EU in terms of investment. As you know, we have now the digital decade objective, with the Commission wanted 5G to be everywhere by 2030, as well as gigabit networks. And my question would be the following: how can BEREC further support private investment into networks? I mean, is there any specific stream that BEREC will develop, for instance, in the remit of their competencies on spectrum policy, to have smart spectrum policy at national level, and also on, for instance, RAN sharing agreement for mobile networks, to give market players more legal certainty or best practices to support that kind of scheme, which is, in our view, can really, sorry for the noise, can really help private investment into networks. So thank you for any insight on those inputs.
Thank you, Aurélie. Who wishes to?
I can take it.
Great, good question, because the 3 chairs wants to take it.
So I will start anyway.
Okay.
So thank you very much for your question, Aurélie. You mentioned the different topics, and of course, private investment are really important. The key driver for the rollout of the future networks, 5G and fiber. That's correct. And from our side, as I mentioned, promoting full connectivity is and remain a high level strategic priorities, not only for this year but for the coming years. So more specifically on spectrum, you probably know that this doesn't fall within the remits of BEREC. We are not dealing with spectrum directly. We are doing this in close cooperation with our colleagues of RSPG. We are following the peer review procedure. But on the other hand, you also mentioned infrastructure sharing. On mobile infrastructure sharing, we have adopted in 2019 a common position where all the potential mobile infrastructure scheme are developed with the advantages, the drawback, and basically to make it short, this is a case-by-case approach. But in this document, you will see that we are real in favor of this passive infrastructure sharing, but also active infrastructure sharing on different models as a whole. You might also remember that with stakeholders, we organized a workshop at the end of last year in December to see to which extent this common position developed in 2019 is still fit for purpose. And the answer is yes, it is still fit for purpose. And of course, we also add in the conclusion that the competition law need to be implemented also thoroughly for that. So that's basically what we did. On the other hand, you have different types of potential cooperation for fixed networks, and for that I will refer to guidelines we adopted about the Article 76 of the codes. So that would be basically my answer. So I can just rely on those documents.
Annemarie, on this idea of or Kostas on how to boost investment by tweaking a bit the regulation and making it more attractive?
Well, I was mostly covered by Michel on the main tools that BEREC has been working on to incentivize investments, spectrum policy, of course, but also infrastructure sharing, and we have published several deliverables in this direction. Just only one thing, we clearly see today a trend of, let's say, a corner case of infrastructure sharing, wholesale only infrastructure providers. So we see fiber companies on the fixed side, we see tower companies on the mobile side. Mm-hmm. So this is a trend today because we all understand that telecom networks, 5G, FTTH, FTTP are capital intensive projects and require investments. This is a model that might be a trend for the following years, and we should follow up with it as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Kostas. Next question. Yeah, Pinar, a newcomer in Brussels, but a veteran of the telecom industry, now with ECTA.
Thank you very much. BEREC's 2023 report on key elements of the functioning of EECC, beyond the assessment on whether the provisions are put into place, will also assess the impact on the achievement of the objectives posed. In other words, will there be an assessment on whether the EECC provisions have increased or decreased the competition, what impact they had on the end user prices or quality, and also retail take-up, or affordability, in other words?
Okay, thank you, Pinar. So, when will we assess all the goodies promised by the code? Whether it's on consumers, you didn't say investment, but I had that look. No, why did I? I said there was some people wanted to know. I guess. Okay, when will BEREC take stock of what has been achieved by the? First of all, member states should transpose it, but that's another matter.
Exactly, Philippe. This is. I was 2 years ago on our last stakeholder forum when I was in, let's say, Costa's position. We were sure that 2022 would be the year where we would start the stock taking, taking inventory on what our first experience would be of putting the code into practice. But unfortunately, as Philippe already gave away, and of course everybody in the room knows that the transposition has been delayed in a lot of member states. So what we saw that, and that I hope we have been explicit enough in the work program, is that although the code asks of us that we take stock the coming year, there is not much stock to take, because basically we have not been able to work with the new instruments because of the lagging transposition. So what we will do is we will share experiences with those countries who have been able to already put things into practice, because not everybody is at the same page. Fortunately, we have some countries that are a bit earlier and others are quite a bit later. And in these discussions, I think your points are very valid. I think we always strive at BEREC to be a fact-based regulator and to take stock and evaluate on the effectiveness. But as I said, we still have to start the work. So the stock taking that will take place in 2022 will be much more of a qualitative nature, given where we are with our instruments and our legal positions in every market.
Thank you very much, Annemarie.
Philippe, the same applies for the assessment of the guidelines, the way they are implemented, but you have to start with the transposition, of course.
Thank you, Michel, for this reminder. Manuel, raise your hand so that the mic can come to you. Well, it's coming from the other side, Manuel. So Manuel, now with Vodafone. It's like football players, sometimes you need to...
Oh, great. Yeah, I had a very high release clause from Deutsche Telekom. Now, I joined Vodafone a year ago, and we are present in several markets. We agree with the digital decade targets. Our feeling is that there is a lot of focus on member states, and what's a concept that is on vogue today is a trace and track. So I think a little of pressure on member states, or where they are, if they are following the measures, etc. What we miss a little bit, it's EU toolbox. What the Commission, there are targets, we need to achieve them, or we believe that it's important to achieve them, but we still don't have a BCRD. We are waiting for the RSPP, or a revised radio spectrum policy program. What we miss a little bit is some enablers to motivate the operators to increase the investments. And I would like to ask you, and any of you, what's your take on basically on the digital decade policy program, and how it can be improved in the process of finalization between the two institutions?
Who wants to?
I can start if you like. Joe, thank you very much for your questions. You asked about enablers, and of course for different topics we have been I think useful to the member states in helping the development of this EU connectivity toolbox, so that member states could themselves develop their own national broadband plans and national digital agendas. That's for sure. On the other hand, it is correct that we also are waiting with a lot of excitement for different initiatives from the Commission, and it's a pity that the representative of the Commission has left the room. But still, yes, BCRD is something we have been worked on. We gave our contributions. So in a nutshell, in the existing BCRD, there are different aspects working well, as you know. Dispute resolution mechanisms, that's okay. Single point of contact, that's fine. What's not okay, because the aim of this directive is to lower the burden, so the red tapes, I would say, and the administrative costs, but also the cost general of the rollout of the networks. And for that, there is one important hurdle, being the building permit procedure. And for the building permit procedure, nearly not a single NRA is competent. So we're really looking forward to the proposal to revise this instrument. But the same apply for other instruments. We are really waiting for the vision of this state aid guidelines on the one hand. And we are waiting also, but this will be discussed in one of the next panel. The access recommendation of the Commission. These are important tools as well, but still we are a little bit left in the dark for the time being. And it was foreseen for this year with the possible reaction of BEREC this year, but I don't know if this will still be possible, depending on the agenda.
Yeah, maybe to add to this, I think that our contribution so far has been that where we understand the goals and the ambitions, of course, it has to be put into practice, and you do need. And this is where difficult dilemmas and where the devils occur. And I think also this is how we approached, for example, our contribution to the DMA debate on saying we understand the ambition, but if you have to put it into practice, remember you have to get your data in order. For example, how do you get your intelligence from the markets? How do you know that what you want to do is actually working? How do you know that basically you're pressing the right buttons? And please make sure that this is aligned with all the other things on statistics and indicators, for example, that we are already collecting. So I think that we have tried to be part of that discussion and to try to implement this in the debate and saying, whatever choices you make sure that in the end it can be put into practice and not overburdening sectors too much, and be aligned with things that are already there and are working.
Thank you, Annemarie. And Kostas, maybe to bring you in on it's not exactly Manuel's question, but on this seemingly disconnect between these ambitious targets of the compass and sometimes declining revenues, perhaps because of excessive regulation on the intra-EU calls, for example. That's the perception among some stakeholders in the room. During the coffee break, Kostas, you shared with me some ideas about how you see that new business model in the telco value chain could bridge that gap between more investment needed while sometimes consumer prices are falling. I was going to say failing, but falling.
Well, this is a very interesting topic because on one hand we have to develop networks like fiber networks, 5G networks that are capital intensive projects, as we said earlier, so we need investments. On the other hand, this definitely affects retail prices, so we need to find the right balance between the two. We need to incentivize investments on one hand, but also on the other hand we are interested in ensuring best quality of service at the lowest possible price for the consumers. So some of the policies we have already discussed today, infrastructure sharing, is something we should support through our policy work at BEREC, and we have done it already. We should also consider some developments in the telecoms industry, like software-defined networking, which is a trend, a mega trend in my opinion, for telecoms industry, and as well as network function virtualization that can really reduce costs on the core network side. So a combination of these technologies supported by the right policies can reduce the deployment costs for network and really help us achieve the right balance between providing incentives on one hand, but also securing best retail prices, best possible retail prices for the consumers.
Thank you, Kostas. Any more question from the room? While you think of a last question, I've got one on the forefront of my mind. In your presentation, Annemarie, the word digital kept coming, and there was electronic communication as well, but digital kept coming. And I would like to ask the three chairs, the role that you see for BEREC in the field of digital. Clearly, Michel, you've fought to for BEREC to play a role on the DMA. I mean, maybe you can tell us how successful your efforts have been so far. But beyond the DMA, I'm just interested how the three of you see BEREC's role in this wider space, beyond the code, beyond electric communication. Is there a role for BEREC? Maybe in sustainability, we heard that as well. You know. But on the DMA first,
more specifically on the DMA, Philippe. So I remember you that in our vision statement and in our strategy, we are talking about digital markets. So this is something we have integrated in our world even last year. More specifically on the digital platform regulations, this is not a totally new topic for BEREC. We have been working on this for several years now. We have produced different reports, but of course we had to speed up the process since the consultation of the European Commission last year. We respond to that. We produce an opinion. We organize workshops with different papers. Recently, we adopted last month a report, ex-ante regulation on digital platform. So yes, it was something I'm personally very proud of, because this was a kind of big knowledge building exercise, and what we wanted to achieve by the end of the day is not to beg for a role for BEREC, but to make it work. So to ensure that those initiatives, which are good, DSA on the one hand, DMA on the other hand, are really enforced. And that's where we have issued different elements. We had very good working relation with members of the parliament, with members of commission, with council as well. And if you look at the latest state of play at the council, you see that different elements we've put forward are taken into account. I just can give a few of them. We have always said that there is a big danger to have this kind of asymmetry in information between what we call the gatekeepers on the one hand and the other one. We always say to put it that way, that you need, like in the electronic communication sector, because basically we have always referred to our experience. This is a long-standing experience, about 20 years in the electronic communication sector. See, this can be useful for the digital market.
Are you being heard? Are you being heard by legislators? Is my question.
I'm coming to that.
I don't doubt the ambition. I'm just wondering, what the other side is
we told you need to have this kind of well-encompassing dialogue with stakeholders, and this is something which is taken on board. The Commission also can impose different obligations to different types of core business services. Is always it's something we've also put forward, because there is no one-size-fits-all. What we are missing, of course, is the dispute resolution mechanisms we have in the electronic communication sector. What we're also missing is the tailoring of remedies at the European Parliament, and there is some role for national. So if you look at the document of the Council, you will see that through the ESN, the European competition networks, there is some role for independent national authorities, which was for us the most important, to have this role for national independent authorities, and even with other types of authorities. In Parliament as well, we have been heard. Precisely, the point person in Parliament, in INCO committee, is Andreas Schwab, and there he developed this idea of high-level advisory boards with digital regulators, where you can different kinds of regulators. And why is it necessary? Just to assist the Commission, because our fear is that the Commission alone will not be able to do it. And also to collect complaints from other platforms, from business users, from consumers, is something which has been taken on board. And another point where we drew the attention was the interplay between the code
and the DMA on interoperability, because this is a hot topic at the Parliament, as you know.
Thank you, Michel. A quick word, Annemarie, on
just
the role of BEREC on digital markets.
Well, just looking forward, as Michel said, we have a strategy that has 3 pillars. So it's promoting connectivity, open and sustainable competition on digital markets, and empowering end users. And what we see is, of course, as we are, so our values of making sure that we have good end-to-end connectivity that serves the end users, be they consumers, be they businesses, be they organizations throughout Europe. And having a system of connectivity meeting societal needs and doing that in a technology neutral manner, you have to take the digital world into account. There is no way that you can actually fulfill our mission without looking at the digital. So as Michel said, our strategy has very consciously replaced electronic communication, which are of course still a very, very important roots that we are coming from. But we have to take the digital world into account because connectivity is nothing without the digital dimension. So it would be really weird if we would ignore that, because it is at the core of what we are trying to achieve.
Thank you. I think it's a great conclusion for our panel. I would please join me in thanking our panelists. And we will now have a coffee break, and I'm asking you to be back here shortly before 3:30, okay? I'll rely on you for the presentation of 2 studies. Okay? Thank you. See you in 20 minutes.
Thank you, Philippe.
See.